gotta be some benefit to coming to a work session, right?
How are you, Bobby? Good.
Having a good day?
I don't think, I don't know.
It wasn't in the online package, so I don't know.
Actually, I
You
put
were
it
at the meeting yesterday, right? Yesterday morning. I saw a Robert iPhone on there, so I'm assuming you actually
The SB 174. Is there a way we could meet and talk about it?
I think you already said it.
Well, I think you gave a copy of the one
The accessory dwelling unit one?
but I don't think you gave my copy.
No.
Done some updates.
No, one's for the flag lot, one's for the accessory dwelling.
That's what I said to you.
Your email, I still haven't. I think it's a PDF.
I don't know. I just sent it off.
If we,
Oh, it
if
is?
we work on that ordinance, there's sections of it.
How's it going, Dusty?
Some lots of real estate in some counties.
I'm busy, man. God loves me. Waking up Rose. And he loves you.
That's what you
They're doing short term
You don't break the rules, so.
Not anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you used to, not anymore.
I've got this close. Richmond and the Cottonwoods. One's been 6. Then you got that listing there.
Is that something we should do then?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at it,
We took it over.
do this.
We're in the contract with Code Region. That one's just over 1
Time, then I would do that.
Should be under contract tonight.
Okay. I would
I
imagine.
know I've got
I
the
won't have
paperwork on it. Just come back. Then got 2 other ones in Mountain Green that are
Because our
under
deadline
contract.
is the beginning of the year.
I'm busy, man. You need to go.
At least something.
The 174 first. First February.
I think Mike did find out that as well. So if we could get just a few more minutes.
Shane will not be here, and Devin will be here.
I had to use like antibiotic drops for the first week. I have to continually use eye drops on it, at least for the first few months. Make sure it heals okay. Oh jeez. That's rough. Especially when the eye starts to swell up and no.
was on, 30 yards on.
We got water everywhere. Wash it down.
The what? There's some in down in the lot.
What happened? Oh,
That's my.
oh. So they wire it? Is that why? Oh my gosh. I have a son that's allergic to my wife is allergic to erythromycin. I have to remember that.
Well, I didn't think I was allergic to it. Because I've never.
Yeah. Sorry, that's
Still,
Still busy?
not as good.
yeah.
Good. That's awesome.
I was in Kentucky and he just moved. I got rush. I had could be lost 15, 20 pounds before I could eat. It's horrible.
First part of that is going to be.
It's not the best diet.
That's one way to lose weight.
I broke my jaw in a car wreck, and the liquid diet will drop
the
it
same?
pounds real quick.
That's horrible.
It was horrible.
It's one thing you crave while you're obese. Only for a while.
Well, if that steak's as good as what was at the barbecue.
And mine are better.
Oh, really? Okay.
Toast filet, we're good. Alright. And then sous vide and
Oh, I see. Oh, yeah, if you could just text and see if he was.
What?
Yeah,
You have to wait.
We have to wait, yeah. And then semis are so big, it's hard for them to go really slow. And they've got a gentleman laid on that corner too right now, so.
Oh my God.
Normally it's about
30.
20 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, 20 minutes.
Do you have a preference until we start with?
no, I thought, if the plan commission had specific questions about it, the county commission might be able to answer. You know, like the PC zone district, we can start with that, and then go through the text.
Did number 5 get cleaned up on the flag lot? Really on number 5, Bill.
Oh, I remember.
Was there a doubled?
Yeah, and I was gonna delete it out.
When we get to that, figure out what this.
What kind of relationship? You guys were just avoiding useless. Thanks. So were there questions that the planning commission members had of the county commission that we could start with those?
So basically my question for both of them is, I feel like both of these are only like just doubling our, density, but in a really crappy way, like putting two houses on the lot. Especially when the accessory dwelling units, it doesn't have a maximum of how big the accessory dwelling unit can be. I mean,
Where is?
on here, it says, which page do you- oh, number 8 on page 3. The minimum size shall be 400 feet, square feet, and there shall be no maximum size.
We want to start with the accessory one first, then.
It doesn't matter what we start with, I just
Somewhere
feel like
referenced
we're
that it
just
couldn't be
increasing our
bigger than
density.
it can only be a percentage of the size of the main home. That's where I originally read it.
Let's start with the flag lot since it's smaller. Yeah. So any questions about the flag lot?
Yeah, I have questions about them. I'd like to hear, obviously they have to say, I'd like to hear. On flag lots, I see there's a answer higher. That's the population. As a what? Higher density population.
To be used there?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I can see it working in areas like that, right?
as
Having
it-
said that,
For infill.
To me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, we have to be able to say, okay, our infrastructure will handle this one. We have water, we have power, we have traffic, we have sewer. We got infrastructure. So that's my question, how do you develop?
So with respect to infrastructure, we generally don't install the infrastructure for any of the things that we do. Roads are typically installed by the developers, utility providers provide the utilities, roads provide the water. And there is certainly a concurrency aspect to developing land. And whatever your lot or subdivision configuration is, if you don't have sufficient utility infrastructure, then you can't move forward. I think that the use of flag lots can facilitate the efficient use of an overall parcel. I don't think that a subdivision should be filled with flag lots. But when you have irregular boundaries and so forth, then when you lay out the subdivision, occasionally several flag lots can help with the utilization of the land. Doesn't double the density because you still have to meet the minimum lot size requirement for each of the flag lots. And I mean, I live on a street with 5 flag lots, and from a public health, safety, welfare perspective, I don't see that they harm anything. And I think that as a country and a community that seeks to conserve its way of life and expects and looks to young people to do that, I don't think you can expect it if we consistently price them out of the housing market. And the more difficult you make it for people to develop land and to come come up with efficient utilization of the land in their development efforts, the more expensive housing prices are. And we do not have a lot of land that's available for development of housing, although there's certainly some, and some of it's been approved, at least conceptually, and we'll see when and if it gets developed. I mean, there's a ton of lots up in the Snow Basin development, and there has been for well over a decade now. And none of them have been built, and none of them have even been planned, you know, and so from my perspective, it's just an efficient layout of the land. I mean, I think the reason there's flag lots on my parcel has something to do with the topography, or on my street was the topography and the way that the property angled as it dealt with the hill. But those lots are very popular. The people that live on them, I think, enjoy. I don't think they have a problem with it. So it's just a matter of flexibility from my perspective.
And I don't think it needs to be in all zones because we have access easements for MU-160, A20 that can open up the back.
I mean, and that's a fairly frequent request as well, right? Somebody's got a relatively large agricultural property, and they want to divide off the back portion and let one of their kids live by it.
And an access easement they could use. So I don't know if a flag lot, it accomplishes the same thing.
Yeah, it does. And if you don't want to, I mean, I'm certainly willing to listen to your recommendations with respect to what zones you think that it ought to be in. I'm not aware of any other jurisdiction in the state that doesn't allow flag lots.
I kind of peruse the different ones and they're all, yeah. Most of the counties have them, not just the cities. I noticed some limited the number of flag lots per the number of subdivision lots. Subdivision came in from 0 to 10 lots, you know, 1 flag lot was allowed and it
Yeah, like I said,
increased.
I don't think that a good subdivision layout would be 3 streets with every one of them a lot and a flag lot. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. But an absolute prohibition results in the inefficient use. I don't believe it doubles density. It may allow more units to be created within the density of a particular parcel, consistent with the density, right? If you are doing third-acre lots, and as a result of being able to do 2 flag lots in your subdivision, you're able to do 32 instead of 30, but they're all third-acre lots and meet the minimum requirements. I don't see that as a problem.
I don't see adding 2 extra lots a way to fix our problem with not enough housing. So either, and
Well,
we cannot control having an affordable housing. There's a bunch of brand new townhouses down in Mountain Green. They're going for what, 600,000? So we decided that's not affordable housing. But we allowed all that growth, right? So I don't agree with the
On the
argument
flip
that
side-
this helps with affordable housing.
Something that you gotta consider too, though, is if you come to Morgan, the townhomes that are over by Tractor Supply, you can still get those for under 400,000. Right? Morgan County is no different than anywhere else in the country, but location matters. Right? You're close to ski resorts, you're close to employment centers, you're going to see more pressure on those units, which is why homes in that green largely hold more money than the further you get up here. Just simply on people's commute, they're willing to sacrifice that way. You're closer in proximity to one recreation opportunities. You don't have many in the area. So people will gravitate towards Mountain View because you got access to Snow Basin and Forest Service land to recreate. And then as much as that's an aspect, you're also really close to the largest employer anywhere around, which is North. And so really short commute, more pressure. So we all think that so many people think that our affordability problem is coming from people coming from out of state. I don't see that nearly as much as I see that Davis County is moving east. Right? Their prices changed a long time ago. Their prices changed because of their proximity to employment. This is happening everywhere. Right? So you're right in that we can't control affordable housing. Part of that is just market dynamics, right? But also, it also didn't hurt to add more options, especially for, you look at the aging demographics of David's generation, where as people are getting older, a lot of their wealth is tied up in their land, right? And so still being able to stay in the community, where do you move once you get older, unless you can stay on your property and find a way to keep your house? The huge part of that is going to be solved with this stuff.
Solved with flag lots?
Flag lots and ADUs, actually. Because if you look at it, that provides people a place to stay on their property and their kids to be able to live close to. That's a massive missing market. The only option that I know for 55 plus living is River Cove over by the bowling alley and the cottages in Mountain View. Both of those products have always sold extremely well because there really isn't much else. Right? So it does definitely help, and a lot of the people that it's going to help, it's going to be the older community that we want to be able to see them stay. The more of the houses that get displaced, the more that we do lose our one man who's got to be able to.
You think the majority of people that want to put in an accessory dwelling unit, that's the reason that they want to do it?
Everybody about it.
The majority?
I don't know if you can say them, I can't tell you, I don't have studies to back it up, but I can tell you that that's a solution that seems to be really popular on how some of these people will be able to afford to stay in places.
I agree that some people will be able to stay, but I don't think that the majority of people are putting in ADUs for their parents that are aging. I think they're doing it for
Why not?
because of all the Airbnb stuff. They're buying the townhouses down there, not for their own families to live in, but for a second.
You cannot allow short-term
No.
rentals. Detached. That's not all it is. No, we could say,
So
could add that.
I'll just say, first of all, I don't suffer from the delusion that passing a flag lot ordinance will solve all affordable housing problems in the county. This is just one tool among many, and there's probably a variety of things that need to be done. I do believe in basic principles of supply and demand. And land use ordinances generally tend to restrict supply. And the percentage of housing costs that is attributable to governmental regulation, including zoning, is quite high. I don't remember the exact percentage that we talked about it, that growth thing we went to a year ago, but it's in excess of 40%. And so this is just a tool to be more flexible. If you have recommendations as to what zones that it ought to be allowed in, I'm happy to hear them. We may ultimately recommend that we don't pass it. That's your prerogative. But those are the reasons why I think it's a useful tool.
So one of my questions has been, what are your goals? Is there a demographic that you're trying to target that this benefits, or is it just simply
Flag lots?
both of these? If you look at both,
I don't
or
have
is there one for each?
There's not a specific demographic that I'm trying to target with respect to flag lots. ADUs, I mean, the internal ones, the state said we had to allow.
Right. Yeah.
And the external ADU, I've been to a lot of different properties that I've stayed in where there is like a casita associated with it.
Yep.
And sometimes, I suppose it is rented out for short-term rental. I'd rather see, in some respects, that kind of short-term rental than an entire home being rented out on short-term rental, because you've got the landlord there, effectively 24/7 to monitor what's going on in the short-term rental unit. If that allowed a younger couple to buy a property here and utilize that to supplement their income in order for it to be affordable to them, that would be a positive from my perspective.
Because I don't see why we would do the maximum size of the unit, especially since we're taxed on the size of the square footage. Second, property lines, they're already regulated the size of these maximum lot coverage and percent pieces. So they're already restricted that based on size. And so I'll write it how you want. I just don't see it.
I mean, there's a lot of things, I mean, as your parents get older, that's the biggest problem. Was we've got to have something where, my dad, for one, he doesn't want me living in his house with him. I wouldn't mind having a little house right next to it. I could live in it, my wife and I, and we can enjoy it for what it is. And he can keep his home until he's there, and I can build a small home. Me, 500 square, 600 square feet. I don't need it. That would be ideal for me. But that's just
What you're describing ties in with what I was saying as far as the older, long-standing members of the community finding ways to get this thing. Initially, when I saw this, I told Josh, I don't think he thought I was very pumped on this idea. My brain's gone all over the place. One, just how the word works is how it can be abused and how it can work against you. I'm also not a big fan of Airbnbs. Largely, you get a community that's been turned over all their single-family homes. 2, 3 out of 4 or 5 being Airbnbs. It destroys communities. But to Bobby's point, having the right by a resident, does shift that to where you still have your community with our 21st century. That's important too.
But so does the attachment.
Everybody that comes in, that has to have accessory units, always has to have detached because they want that separation. They don't want to share.
My mom came to look at us for last year. Bronco Hunters meeting in Monterey. And I can tell you, I'm not about to say, but I can tell you that that would have been much more comfortable for both sides had I had a detached ADU. You're probably right. I'm just saying, you can look at all the negatives, but there's also a lot of positives that really do work for our community and being able to keep community members here. People that worry about us losing our culture and our identity, a lot of that's going to matter how many long-term residents are able to stay here, not getting priced out and finding options that do allow for things to work to keep it here. And this doesn't solve it. It definitely doesn't hurt.
But having the short-term rentals there, unless you're going to restrict it off of single-family homes,
Right.
is not benefiting the community.
I agree with that.
If you're gonna restrict it off single-family home,
I would like to see group
a lot of it's a certain percentage, the ones I've read,
Yeah.
of the main home.
That's how I thought this was.
I look at it this way also, guys.
You did, but a lot of them, it used to be ours was 1,000.
Some counties about.
1,000. I think a lot of them are a maximum 1,000. A certain percentage of the main dwellings up to 1,000.
I look at myself all the time, and I'm just thinking for me, because I'm pretty typical of some people. Maybe we have a daughter or a son that divorced and not doing all kinds of things. We need to help them make that. I have. So we travel to North. Every day is so much easier to have a smaller detached one. I can live in a big house, vice versa. That way I can do my busing and I can send them to school. And they don't, I don't have to have two houses. Because that's the only way to live. Go down there because I'm going to say, no. Because I'm not going to travel down there to get their kids when they don't have enough money to do it.
But only this, but not being the size doesn't make anything.
I thought detached.
Yeah, detached. If you don't limit the size, it doesn't keep you from limiting the size of your. I guess that's.
Because what he's saying is there's no maximum, so
Well,
there's a
I'm
minimum,
saying
so you
if I
need to
want
build
that-
at least 400, and under the way this is presently drafted, you wouldn't need to build 2,600 square feet, you could just do 1,000. That's what you
Well, I just don't want to see us. I don't want a smaller homes detached.
Well, and maybe it's best stated as a percentage.
Yeah, but I just don't want to see us have this. I don't want two homes on the same lot. I mean, two big homes on a single lot. Even if you've got 2 acres.
That's going to have to do with the setback.
Yeah.
And to be honest,
Lot
one
coverage.
of my questions is, why limit it to just half-acre lots? Like if
I thought.
you thought it was half-acre or larger?
No,
Oh, I may have limited it to probably a little larger, just because I think the setbacks, the size of it is
larger.
they're not gonna have a lot of setbacks.
So one of the guys I work with, he's doing a development in Willard right now. They've got 30-acre lots, and they're approved for detached detached ADUs, and it's done just like how if you had a 30-acre lot and you put in a detached shop, it still fits.
So the accessory dwelling unit is above the shop in some
In
instances?
some instances, yeah.
The house I'm building right now,
It's a 3,600 square foot garage. 1,200 square foot. It's a house that runs on this one. It's nice. That's about it.
I don't think it should be limited to just half
That's
acre
the one
lots.
kind of envy I have, garage envy.
Oh man, totally.
I
I
don't
told
seem to
Mindy,
ever think I could ever have
if we have a
another.
build again, it's gonna be a
And your
little
need for
house.
speed and that.
But I mean, and I think if I'm gonna know why the minimum of 400 square feet is reasonable for that.
It is lower than that, even in tiny homes. Because they're not built to international rules. They're built to standards.
Didn't you allow,
That's a problem.
So,
I thought
So I
you
guess
allowed it
it's-
if, you did allow it if it's put on a
If they can-
foundation.
If they can show that the tiny home is constructed to
Yeah.
IBC, as opposed to the, you don't have to permit construction standards. That's different. No,
You're not trying to allow mobile homes.
right, there should be the mobile homes, but the RVs, like single wides, those are RVs, typically sub 400 square feet. So if you require more than 400 square feet, then you're getting out of the RV size.
Why bring them in boxes?
Yeah, I've seen those.
And they're approximately 20 by
That's,
6 inches.
so I'd have to look at.
They have to be permanently attached. You can't have your tongue or anything on it. You said what?
The seat,
Yeah.
they have on the side.
Did you construct it like the two parts?
it looks like they're manufactured.
They're pre-manufactured boxes there. That's what they are. They're clean.
Those look like they're placed on a foundation.
Yeah.
I can talk
Yeah.
to Dave Webster about looking at it, but if that meets the international building code, then it's considered a home as opposed to an apartment.
But that's something that is inexpensive. You don't have that.
Well,
We basically have what was from a theater.
those are good.
I don't remember where I saw it, Josh, but in one of these papers that I read, it was a minimum of a half acre. And I just,
I thought it said that too.
I'm not seeing it in this printout,
Yeah.
but I know that was in there.
Detached accessory building shall be allowed in the following situations: on lots that are half acre in size, or on lots that are part of the season, which are literally
Yeah.
or on lots that are
So why not, why limit it to half acre?
I don't have a problem. There's already the that's in
Setbacks. Right, so if they can fit it, and it fits within the setbacks. That'd be my recommendation.
So we don't.
We do have, when you look at baby boomers and that population.
So that one right there is 360,
the
oh, is it
housing
361
crisis
square
that's
feet
facing that
square?
generation, yeah,
Feet square, square feet.
they're way underfunded for retirement and to be able to live.
Yeah, so
That
see
is
that
a
one.
little issue that has, right?
Here's my question.
I know what you're saying, you want the rural atmosphere?
The state is going to force us to do this, that's fine. My question back to the state is, last week when we were in Gary, we have them all here, and I called cops and said, they're making a mess of it. Cops are going to say, yeah, to them.
doesn't, it's not necessarily related to lot size or flag lots or anything else. Some people maintain their homes and farms in a nice way, and others are not as much. You have a lot of cars.
That's all I'm saying back to the purchase folks is there's probably just less than what you're saying. And I have another question for Josh. Commission the offices for flag lots. How does that work with a person who doesn't? They're gonna take the front lots that are along the road. They have to so it's the 820, 8.5, over.
If they don't have the size to divide off, they need the first number. So it's the decision.
In other words, the lot would have to be 20 acres.
I don't keep track of the commission. Did the commission pass the document we looked at where they said that they pass it?
No, we're still, it's, the changes that were requested last meeting.
So they have a tool now that's in within 10 acres or
No, for rural single-family residential, the application rate is 50 acres. For residential, this is administrative, that may change.
and then they would come in and do their own stuff.
All subdivisions have to do their infrastructure.
Sewers.
You were asking
It
size.
depends on the lot.
Size of
So
Right, where we read it, yeah. It's got
sewer
35 to
system
40
county
acres.
has its entire boundaries that it's
I didn't see the
And
size.
so Mount Green
Homes up on
is
Back Street, I didn't count those.
Everywhere else, where it's
That's what I'm saying back to you, Josh. I think we're going to have
Bees,
that.
but it would be.
Are we going to change
Are you
that?
looking down on it?
Yeah.
To accommodate that? Is that what you're saying?
well, the property owners have to apply for it. There's no guarantee it's not
I know that they're going to do it if they do it.
They can do that now.
Right, but what I'm saying back to you is the infrastructure, they have to pay for infrastructure. Their own streets, and sewers, and
That's right.
water, everything. And it's a big deal.
For PC zoning district, somebody right now has like 30 acres. So, or even 17 acres, and there's a lot of those that are non-conforming lots. They can come in and have like representatives or 5 people for R1. And they have the right to submit that application to the process. There's no guarantee of approval, there's no guarantee of they can do that now. The only difference would be some of those lots might be flag lots.
So I'm saying you're gonna go behind the present zone. Okay, lot, so are you going to do the 8.5?
No, we're not getting rid of zoning. I
But
don't
what I'm
appreciate
saying back to you is if you're gonna create flag lots, if you're gonna go along and work on it,
820 behind,
how are you going to address that?
required 20 acre lot, full flag lot.
They would have to go through a subdivision process if they have a significant places.
The lot would be 20 acres.
So that's my question, Billy, how does that look now? Okay, flag lots, give us that call, flag lot. Is that now 820 flag lot?
The
It's
parcel,
just the division, the lot is created through a subdivision. They use the flag lot to create.
the
So
lot,
if you
the
pass a
20
flag
acre
lot,
lot.
ordinance, you're gonna make them do this over the list.
They even have to go through a subdivision.
What's the law? So why don't they just do the subdivision?
Well, because sometimes the lots that they have are narrow.
They don't have the frontage.
They don't have the frontage for both lots. And they don't have between the existing house and the side of the property to construct an entire street. And there's some people who have property they'd like to divide it into two. Current standard requires them to put in a full street on their side. put an entire street of infrastructure for 2 lots. There's no way that gets it. There's no way.
Yeah, but what I'm saying back here is, in today's present zoning, we just have A5, A1, A2. Regular zoning, tunnel zoning, tunnel zoning. So what do you need to, because of subdivision, one way, do the subdivision?
Well, right now, they
Because
have.
if they have a flag lot ordinance, they can just come in and apply a flag lot
They,
Well, they can divide it now if they have the frontage. That's why they can create. it.
Under what ordinance?
Subdivision.
Street. Or
Subdivision. That's what I'm saying, okay, ordinance. One goes,
We're adding the flag lot section into the existing ordinance, which would require future property owners to continue to go through the subdivision process and continue to make the private lots. So there's still gonna be held to the subdivision standards and the zoning standards, which includes lot size requirements for the zone. So we're not creating new zones. If they have 1 acre within the town zoning, 50 acres, 20 flag lot in the back, well, the front lot has to have a minimum in the R1. Back lot has to have a minimum of 20 acres.
And there has to be enough width in the front lot for them to meet the flagpole width requirement in order for.
but they could do an access easement now, even if we didn't. So flag lots in 820, it wouldn't change it much. They can do it with an access easement and back to 20 acres in the back.
I mean, I'm your house is situated, see if we can put you on your house. It's impossible. I think we do it unless you move up the house.
I don't really,
I know you may not want to.
no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm looking at what people do, what they want out there, what they want.
I'm just looking at it for me, there are some people that put up down throughout my dirt road. Way back, to go way back.
That's fine. We want, I'm asking what you're, I don't know.
I don't know how, like you guys would want to. I mean, I just want to see us be more accommodating without benefits. I hope we don't. No problem. It's mine, it's Haley's, I know it's everyone's. We want to stay in the room when we can. But, you gotta allow it. So, otherwise-
We already allow things with ordinances that we already have in place. Like, I get that there should be changes, but I guess what's the point of the whole rule book if the rule book just changes all the time?
That's life. Life changes. Life changes.
Situations on the ground changes.
Situation always changes. Change for good, change for stupid. You know, change for the wrong. Change for you. You were a girl in my class. To now, you can change. You've got kids growing up. You may have to change something. So in other words, change is the thing. You gotta have change. I don't like it. I'd love to keep my 50 acres, whatever I have. I'd love to have kept it. It's not there. The last one recorded, we're up to one. Something like that. Haven't stayed with it. So, I'm just saying, you gotta change.
I get that there's changes, but specifically for the flag lot, if there's already a way for people to utilize their property using an easement, I don't see a need for a flag lot.
It's
That's an
permitted in
820,
one
those are
zone.
the bigger lot
Yeah.
zones, but not in,
Not in any
about
other
green.
area. Look, alls I would ask, look at it, make the best recommendation you can in terms of what you would want, in terms of if we vote to approve it. And if you, notwithstanding those changes, still don't like it, you can send it forward with a negative recommendation and say, no, as a planning commission, we don't think that you should do this at all. But if you do it, this is how we would do it. That's kind of what.
Or some recommendations.
Okay,
Any Any other questions that you have for us?
Just as I think about it, it seems fine, kind of about family, but in 30, 60 years, that house is still going to be there, and it's going to change. It's hard to say what's going to happen with that. I know we can't, crystal ball and see what's going to happen. Everything's going to work out perfectly, but I'm just curious if there's something we need to be prepared for to think about, saying, is there going to be complication?
I mean, I guess, I'll say this in terms of the detached accessory dwellings. I mean, I've lived adjacent to neighborhoods that have, or in the vicinity at least, big homes with these accessory dwellings back on the back, or in the back area. And I don't even know how many of those were occupied on a regular basis. They were like guest houses for when the kids or other people came to stay. And I mean, I think if you have, and that might be why you would keep it at a half acre or larger, because maybe there's more room and that's okay. I just don't believe that it's necessarily the case that if you allow a detached accessory dwelling, that the people who live in it are going to be undesirable in some way. It's possible. It's always possible. It's possible that the people living next door to you in their single-family home are undesirable in some ways. I have neighbors that may feel that way about me.
So, a selling perspective, when they go to sell their home, accessory building, it's higher cost.
Increased value.
Yeah.
You can expect it's really possible.
So, does that really kind of compare to other houses, or only compare to houses with a sales rate?
So it's kind of like how an appraisal is going to value a shop. Where, especially when there's not many around to compare to, it gets really tough. It's part of what's going to be what you most of the time, when you see somebody build a shop, it's not a great investment. On the appraisal, you don't put that in the house. So this could fall into that. Or maybe this maybe isn't the best investment. There's no comps that are showing us right now that there's massive value there. But if the market shows up and says, well, we'll pay more because that's there. I just had a client who his grandma sold her home. Maybe sold their home. Because his grandfather died. Both of his parents are gone, and somebody's got to take care of grandma. So they had to sell everything so their grandma could live with them and combine people with her. She's not just anymore, she's not 80 years old, she's probably 70 years old. But she needed somebody to be looking out for her. So luckily the state had gone forward and forced people's hands on being able to have ADUs in the home. For a long time, the mother-in-law, if you actually look at the comps, the mother-in-law didn't improve the value. And what people thought. If you look at the comps that did come, there wasn't evidence in a lot of cases that showed that it made a difference. For instance, there's places in Ogden where if you took all the 3-bedroom homes, they're actually selling at a higher rate than 4-bedroom. But you would think, well, a bedroom has to have a bedroom. That's not always the case. It depends on the area. So the market ultimately is saying that.
These
There's a
are
lot of
income,
ways.
where a shop doesn't necessarily.
So if you're getting rental income,
Yeah.
then you can definitely show that there's value there, and they can factor that into the appraisal for sure.
One of my sons has lived in an accessory dwelling, detached, 2 separate times since he's been here. Frankly, it's his in-laws, and it's just a apartment over a garage. Father-in-law wanted to build the garage, built the accessory dwelling unit in the top. I suspect it's square feet. There's a kitchen, a bathroom, bedroom, and a little living area. You know, it's, I don't know that, maybe the neighbors down there were outraged by the fact that he was there, I don't know, but whenever I went over, it didn't seem like it was a bad thing. It would help him to save money, to get a down payment, to put on the townhome they're living in now.
There's a home in the Cottonwoods that has that. It's on Park Meadow Drive. There's a shop, and there's an apartment on it. We're not allowed detached accessory dwelling units, right? So all you had to do is run a breezeway from the house to the shop, and now it's not a detached ADU.
That's
It worked.
because it's not the internal.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It passed.
Well, I was.
And nobody's having a big issue with it. He's never rented it out. He runs a business. There's a bedroom in the back, a kitchen, and a front room. He's never rented it out. That would be a good idea to have it. He largely just rents his office. I don't think it's. I don't think anybody. I've never heard anyone about it more. So I don't see this being a huge deal, especially if the primary home has the resident,
Property owner.
right? The property owner lives there. I think that solves most
That's
of
gonna be a requirement.
those concerns.
All right, are we gonna do these line by line or what?
Or do we wanna, need to get out?
You guys have a regular meeting now?
Okay, at 6:30.
So, I think I will tell you that I prefer not to involve myself with your discussions of the text, so that you guys feel free to recommend what you want in terms of the textual changes.
That helps.
Let's start with accessory dwelling.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for the sandwich. No, I'm good.
And then the
It is cold in here.
part of the reason that this is on the mic. Having its lost leg, got it amputated a while back. His health stable.
This one more to the center.
There's a way for us to do this. There's she can either live in an ADU, somebody lives in, or one of us lives in an ADU. She stays there. She's gone. And then there's another long-standing community member. You know this guy's got
Yeah, I saw that.
nice house, swimming pool, plenty of yard. And then detached ADU. This is the hell I was talking
We
about.
we can limit with zones.
Detached. Here's the shop.
Flag lots should be
Connected with the breezeway.
I would say they've exceeded their lot coverage requirement.
Yeah, but they could.
Setbacks, he doesn't meet setbacks on the side, I almost guarantee that.
You know,
That's not another.
it can't be on another acre.
Not
It
trying
has
to
be
be
just
jigsaw
behind
puzzle,
our
but
kennels
I
are
don't want to
right.
Right.
stir anything
That's
up.
an example.
But this was built in
They
2010.
already have a way to.
No, this would have been
Yeah, at least.
And
That
access,
was a
yeah,
different one.
so I've seen
This
the
was
bigger
probably
lots, we
built
don't
in
necessarily allow, but
2015.
we can limit
Okay,
So-
No, but
when we get there.
I mean, this went through. This went through the county.
So let's start on,
I can't speak to it in loud, but I'd say he'd be hard pressed to prove that he's meeting, lot coverage requirements for the zone of his, first of all. I can probably tell you from the side there, he doesn't meet side yard setbacks, at least on that.
So do they allow encroachment when you have a shop?
No? The accessory dwelling units are allowed 10 feet.
I don't know if that's 10 feet.
As long
It
But either
doesn't
way-
look like
Well, thank
10
you.
feet.
But
Sounds like it.
when you drive past, I've never heard one person,
That's true, they probably don't complain about it, don't say anything about it.
never heard anybody say anything. So in my head, this is what I'm picturing is.
Well, people are already doing it now without
you.
permits.
Guys, have a
We
good
know
night.
of one that was constructed a few years ago, Dave Webster caught him, gave him a stop work order, and they didn't stop him. They continued to build.
So then what happens?
Well, at the time, the county council didn't want the planning department to leave the property with a notice of compliance, so.
talked about a breezer, we had a guy, that's, well, he wanted to subdivide rezone. It didn't go, so he thought duplex, but I don't want any adjoining walls. So he's proposed 2 homes with 100-foot breezeway.
Oh, jeez.
It was hilarious. We never laughed so hard.
That's
He says,
crazy.
I like my son, but I don't want him that close, so there was a 100-foot breezeway. We'll
get out of tangent.
So going through word for word, if you're going through the detached accessory dwelling unit section, only the text that is bolded and some is capped, but only the bold is what's changing.
The others from the internal.
Yeah, everything that's not bolded
Okay.
is what's already
just ignore.
existing.
We're gonna ignore it or we can change it.
If you want to change it,
If we're gonna open it. and
But the
do this,
exce-
we might as well-
But the internal one's kind of dictated by the state.
the internal is dictated by the state.
You
Why
can't
is it
change.
not two separate things?
It's 2 separate things. I left the internal accessory dwelling unit separate.
Oh, I see.
So.
Alright.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all I've added is the definition for accessory dwelling unit. I've added occupancy requirements. And then I've added a section for detached accessory dwelling.
So on the occupancy requirements, they're for family only.
No.
Is that what I'm seeing?
No, that's not what that
No, it
means.
says no more than 5, but any number of blood related.
That is the,
Oh, yeah.
That's
Okay.
state.
that
That's
is the
state.
federal definition of family.
Yeah.
All right.
You can't change that, which is why I'm putting it in.
Yeah, you can't.
So we can't limit the number of people in the accessory dwelling.
If they're
They're
blood
family.
related,
No.
no, you can't.
limit.
Even now,
You get to have as many kids as you
You
want,
want.
Haley.
And 5, and then the
Yeah.
5, unlimited. I say just limit one. I don't think it's in there, but
I haven't thought about that.
I would
but-
say just limit one. But, well, when we get there.
Yeah.
Are you a designated reader, maybe, school teacher?
Sure. Where do you want to start? B?
Yeah.
Occupancy of the accessory dwelling unit shall meet the requirements of federal definitions for family, specifically any number of blood-related family members or up to 5 family. That's federal. number 2, for the purposes of definition of family, the term shall mean spouse, parent, child, stepchild, grandparent, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, first cousin, great grandparents, great grandchild. This does not include other more distant relationships. Number 3, the accessory dwelling unit may be rented to a second or separate family as defined above from the main structure. Is that, where's that from?
That's the addition there to mean that you can rent it out, but that second accessory dwelling unit, if rented, has to follow the same definition as the family.
Okay, is this where we need to put a length? That it can be rented as a rental versus a short term?
I think that'd be
no,
bigger.
this is just occupancy.
Letter C.
At least alone, that's.
Letter C, I just had to add a letter C.
Because that's a
Yeah.
general.
That's internal accessory dwelling unit. That's
That's
already in
state.
the code.
Letter D, detached accessory dwelling units. Detached accessory dwelling units shall be required to go through a modified land use approval process that shall be approved by the zoning administrator.
Okay, that's a question. Do we want zoning administrator, or do we want it,
That's what's allowed by the internal. That's what's allowed.
but not for detached?
True. I just copied the number one
Right.
over because
That's
So you're
something we
saying,
can change.
should they come,
us
saying,
or-
do
Should
they come here?
Yeah, should they come to the planning commission, or do you think staff? And I'm fine, that's something that we can think about as far as.
So you just call it an interest,
the first portion of it.
so you just approve it.
Yeah, if they come in, they want to do an internal accessory dwelling unit. All I do is I regulate it based on.
If somebody wants to build a barn, where do they go? Question mark?
Yeah, if we can,
Site plan submittal requirements for land use approval shall include the following. Engineered or architecturally designed drawings of the accessory dwelling unit with dimensions of all setbacks, building size, calculations of total lot coverage, floor plan, and location of required parking spaces. Buildings or building elevations with proposed materials and building height. Geohazard report generated in accordance with section 859. Detached accessory dwelling units shall be allowed in the following situations: on lots that are half acre or greater in size, or on lots that are part of a PC zone district overlay and were included in the list of allowed uses, or on lots that were given approval within the development agreement.
I
I asked,
question the half acre, we had that discussion, so we can come back another time and address that, but,
well, why don't we address that?
okay.
My thought process is if it fits the setbacks
And the lot coverage.
and the lot coverage, you're gonna have a tough time getting them done anyway on smaller lots than that.
This
But-
would have a large house on it to begin with.
If you put your home on, you set it up right to begin with, which most lots in the county, the way that you place your home is not going to allow for that anyway.
Right.
But if it fits,
So I could just change that to on lots that meet minimum setbacks and lot coverage requirements.
yeah. You guys good with that?
I don't know, because if you have a half acre and then you stick another accessory dwelling on it, why aren't we doing 4 acres on it?
You wouldn't really be
We're
able,
not
you
dividing.
wouldn't be able to fit this.
I know, but like I'm saying is they
Because the
where they were allowed one house and now we're giving them two.
Right, but they don't have the frontage, it'd be,
On a smaller lot. So you've seen neighbors that have put in shops,
Yeah.
right? Realistically, it's the same thing. The only thing that's different is the loft above the shop may have an apartment in it. But that's a, that.
But are they building a shop with an apartment on top, or are they building just
Either
a
or.
house?
It would be
Either,
like,
either
You,
or.
you could do either or,
Most people probably do the shop.
but it would make the most sense.
I vote one or more acres.
Okay. So
Dustin?
leave that question there for you. When we bring it back before us on a regular meeting deal. If you have, I'm okay with smaller lots, because I don't think it'll.
I think if you fit the setbacks, it's gonna be tough to pull it.
Okay, then why even have that an option? It's gonna be a tough
But it might
lot.
work
Why
for
have it an
someone.
option?
Could work.
Yeah, we're quartering a lot of smaller Logger Highlands.
If you've got an old farmhouse where they put it near the corner, maybe you have to do something on the side.
And someone may have a detached garage, and they
Right.
can stick an apartment on top of an existing detached garage.
Alright, letter B, on lots that.
Before we, oh, okay, go on. I was gonna say, where do we add, I think we only have one accessory dwelling unit to be allowed on a lot.
I agree with that.
So, I don't know where to put that,
Let's see,
number two,
shall be allowed in the following situations.
where, or a separate number, whatever. Sure, only one
Can they
accessory
have one
dwelling
of
unit?
both?
Yeah,
Can they
that's
have an out and an in?
I would limit it to one
per, either or. Either internal or detached. Only one.
I think it's a really good idea.
Number 3, the accessory dwelling unit shall comply with all setbacks and height requirements of the building structure. Number 4, the area of the ADU area of the main structure shall not exceed the maximum lot coverage allowed. Number 5, the property owner shall occupy one of the sections with the following exceptions.
Yeah, I just crossed with the following exceptions
Yeah.
out. The property owner
Shall
shall
or must?
occupy.
I would say shall.
Shall.
Shall is mandated.
They can either be in the
So-
main or they can be in the accessory, but they need to be one or
Because
the
to me,
other.
shall is,
Must. No, shall,
No,
well, that's main.
legally shall is mandated. May is,
And
At your option.
Number 6, I vote plus on. The ADU may be used as a short-term rental.
if we didn't have short-term rentals allowed in main homes, I'd be okay, and single family, I'd be okay, but
Do we have short-term rentals allowed?
yes.
it's
Anywhere.
allowed by the state, and I'm not allowed to look to see who's doing it. So anybody can do it, and the only
Can-
way I find out is A, the complaint comes in, and they come in and say, hey, I want to do a short-term rental. And then we have a short-term rental code that they have to follow.
I still vote we take out number 6 for the argument about. Just having people coming in and out versus
So-
one family living in the
So
accessory dwelling
technically-
unit, being part of a community.
Technically, the landowner could live in the ADU and short-term rental the main house.
They could.
But you still have the owner that's
There,
present.
there, but if we say short-term, you can't short-term the ADU. And I think it is a good situation that the owner's there, but yet we have it
I
throughout
think
the
it
county
improves,
without.
I think it improves
It
the
does.
situation dramatically versus
If you could
when
take
they're
it,
not there.
yeah, if you could take it out of the,
Most of the
Others.
problems that you hear from those are from remote owners
right.
that have no oversight.
If it was only, short-term rentals only allowed in ADUs, I'm for that. But I don't know if we could do that.
We can't, if the state allows it, we can't say.
Does it, but I don't think the state allows them everywhere, because I know some jurisdictions don't allow them.
I'd have to see how they were able to.
Okay.
Allow what? Short-term ADUs?
No, just short-term rentals, period.
There were
There's some jurisdictions that have outlawed them.
if I remember right, St. George put a stop. At least, I don't know if it's resumed, but they put a stop to some of those. And I don't know that, I think they're the only ones that I know of. I know Moab was grappling with it. But largely it's going to be in those are recreation destination communities. I mean, we're not that.
We're not that.
Barely. Monitoring something on August 30th. Every restaurant is closed in. Because no one else.
Yeah.
Well,
When all those people that went and did a bunch of
there's one.
Airbnbs up there, they're most of the ones that have done it recently, it hasn't turned out very well. I know some people who bought some. The market does drive it, but you've got to be like for that to really be insane, to where you're grappling with a serious issue. Largely, it's happening in recreation destination areas.
I still think that we should take it out. One of the purposes that they wanted this is so that we are giving more tools for people to stay
You're
here.
defeating the purpose.
Right. Short-term rentals do not help our community.
Well, they do.
My family
Helping
of
with the
five
supply.
living in a casita behind my house, that's helping the community.
It is, but also what Robert McConnell was saying was, if you've got a young family that's able to stay here or live here because they're able to subsidize some of their payment through that,
But they could rent it to long-term and not short-term.
Right.
As long as it's more than 30 days or whatever.
Is that the definition?
I don't know what it's something like that.
it's great. You can't
The
stop
difference between
anyone for
short-term and long-term is at 30?
It needs 30 days.
30 days. So, I don't have a problem with taking it out. We can,
But one of the reasons that this is on our table today is to help keep our area rural, care about old people or our younger kids that need places to live. Short-term rentals are not the way.
no. I agree. Unless you take, you can say shall not be used.
Yeah.
Is there a definition of short-term somewhere in there?
Yeah. Yep.
Number 7, the ADU structure shall be designed architecturally to match the style and design of the main structure, including exterior materials, color, and finish. I agree with that, but also what if they're just blocks? Like, what if the brick that your house is made of no longer exists?
Yeah, as long
Once
as
it's
it's brick.
And color coordinated.
Number 8, the minimum size of an ADU shall be 400 square feet. There should be no maximum size.
I think it should be a percentage of the neighborhood.
I agree with that.
I look, some places say 50%. You can pick a percent. 6% of main dwelling. Let's say your main dwelling, and that's just the main floor. They don't count basements.
Right.
Oh, they don't.
No,
It's above ground.
It's your above grade
It's
square
above grade,
footage.
so it's either the first or second floor, but they don't do basement. So if you had a 2,000 square foot house, 50% would be 1,000.
Okay, I'm really bad with sizes, but how many houses have more than 2,000 square feet?
On the main level, a lot.
Right.
Most.
So that's big.
The olders aren't, but the newer ones are.
Minimum main floor square footage in most of the cottonwoods is like 1,700, 1,750.
Minimum.
Like in the new phases, and
That's
it's
not
that.
thinking 60% is a lot.
You can say,
It's not that. When you really look at the main structure, it's not a lot.
But if you think of a 30 by 30, that's
Right.
900 square foot. There's only a 30 by 30 building, 900 square foot.
If we're,
So 1,000,
And
if we're stripping out, just, if we're stripping out, don't do short-term rentals, and we're really trying to focus on families being able to live there.
you need
You,
livable.
you want them to be able to be comfortable.
Live there with kids.
In there, right?
You don't want them on top
So-
of each other.
You know, in my mind, if you can fit it, it's not bigger than the main house.
Okay, thank you. I'm like a clock this way. Thank you. Put that as a good question mark. We will continue that discussion, but we think there should be a maximum size. We haven't figured out. Okay, we will.
So can we have another work session?
Yeah, if you'd like, we quit at 9, I will. What?
no, Jake has her. I didn't really bring her to this. There was a meeting. Plus, she rolls around now.
Ready?
She's a lot more talkative.
Yeah, I didn't know the possibility. thing is approval of agenda. I have a motion to approve. I have a motion by member Bass and a second by member Little. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Declaration of conflict of interest with any item on the agenda. I'll state I don't have a conflict of interest, but WPR Phase 5 preliminary plat, our water right, goes through that development. So we'll move on to public comment. We have no legislative or public hearing tonight. So if you have any comment you would like to make regarding any item on our agenda or any other item you'd like to bring forward to the Planning Commission, now is your time. If you could step up and state your name or giving your comment.
My name is Kim Warner, and my brother, sister, and I own adjoining property just to the west of Canyon View Commercial West subdivision. We've been in contact for several months with Morgan County Planning and Development Services Director Joshua Cook and John Geragard. I probably mispronounced that. The project director from Wasatch Civil Consulting in Engineering. In our communications and in the Morgan County recordings, they mentioned the importance and necessity of an operational 24-inch UDOT culvert that extends from the north side under I-84 to the south side, approximately at mile marker 93, along with a third retention pond. This culvert is currently not close to being operational, especially on the south side of I-84, nor has it been throughout the years, and it needs to be, due to the volume that's projected to travel through it, especially in the tune of a car wash. The drainage ditch that parallels the south side of I-84 that's included in the UDOT right-of-way needs to be cleaned out and made operational so that the drainage waters may exit freely down to the Weber River. Otherwise, the drainage waters will back up and spill onto other landowners' properties, including ours. In addition, it speaks of a third retention pond, which at this date does not exist. Please understand that our family is not opposing the car wash. I'm here to tell you that I'm going to give them some business if and when it does happen. But expect these two important infrastructure items to be fully operational and function before the official development begins. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 7. This is a discussion decision, Brown All-Star Car Wash site plan, and also the conditional use permit for the car wash, auto wash.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. Item number 7 on tonight's agenda is for applications. Well, first application 23.045. This is a request for site plan approval for the Brown All-Star Auto Wash, a commercial car wash on the Canyon View Commercial West area. The property is identified by the parcel numbers and serial numbers in your staff report and is located at 5806 West Canyon View Place in Mountain Green. Additionally, a conditional use permit is being brought forth to you tonight for this project. That's application 23.076, which is a request for a conditional use permit for this project. to allow for reduced setback requirements due to the property having frontage on 3 separate county rights-of-way. The applicant for this project is Braden Brown. The area of this is 1.1 acres, and the general plan land use designation has this area as commercial, specifically vehicle-oriented commercial. The zoning district currently is highway commercial, outlined in the pink color on the legend there. Staff has reviewed this project and finds that it meets all minimum code requirements. All comments from fire, planning, and engineering have been addressed to the point of this report. I, along with Josh, can answer any questions you may have, and the applicant is in the audience tonight. Please.
My question is to address Kim's comment regarding the culvert and retention ponds. The comment was that the grading and drainage plans were reviewed and approved as part of the subdivision application. Has that been resolved?
Yeah, the planning staff has been in contact with Mr. Warner about this subject. The infrastructure is either completed according to the subdivision, or we're still in an assurance and warranty bond period. John Biergard and Mark Miller both reviewed the subdivision plans again and drafted a memo for Mr. Warner, which was sent to him. The design of the subdivision met our minimum code requirements. I can have Mark Miller go out there and inspect that culvert to see if it's been constructed or if it's in the process. However, the subdivision was approved, and this is a site plan review process for an allowed use on that property.
Any other questions for staff? Or for the applicant?
I guess I assume that the water is going to be recycled and not all of it's going to go down the ditch.
Well, maybe the applicant can come forward too.
Okay, well, all of that water is required to go into Mountain Green Sewer Improvement District's water lines, where they will treat the water. The only water that from that site that'll go into any of the retention ponds, which were set aside for the subdivision when it was created, is the runoff from rainwater that is water.
Yeah, we're installing a system that has holding tanks underneath. And the water will move through there, and we're going to reuse about 90% of the water. So that's the plan.
Out of curiosity, do you know how much water is required?
So just based off of our projections, we plan on using about 150,000 gallons per month, just based off of traffic counts and industry standards. And then we plan on reusing 90% of that, and it's fresh water in the very last pass of the car, which is the spot free rinse. So technically, about 20,000 gallons per month of fresh water. Yep.
Anybody else have any questions for the applicant?
I have a question on the UDOT that Kim brought up. Is that anything to do with Browns, or is that a UDOT issue? Who's problem is that?
The culvert goes under UDOT, and I think it's an existing one. So that's probably a UDOT issue.
Does it have anything to do with his application, Josh?
Thank you.
What relation is Mr. Ryder, the Warner's name?
They were just neighbors, the adjoining property owners. And Kim spoke in the beginning.
All right, I'll probably abstain from this one.
Well,
It's just a public comment.
it was a public comment.
Okay.
Yeah, state statute wouldn't require you to abstain yourself or even recuse yourself unless you would benefit financially from approval of the.
Okay.
So you should be okay.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
just declare the conflict. There's no conflict with the actual application itself. It's just there was a public comment that may be related to,
Okay.
but it's not related to the project. Does that make sense?
Yep. No, I appreciate the clarifying. Just wanted to make sure I didn't have any conflict.
Not right now, Will. If there's no more comments, I'm ready for a motion. We'll have two motions that are in the packet. First, for the site plan,
Madam Chair, I move we recommend approval to the County Commission for the Brown All-Star Auto Wash Site Plan Application 23.045, allowing for the proposed commercial development located at 5806 West Canyon View Place in Mountain Green based on the findings and with the conditions listed in the staff report dated November 9, 2023.
I have a motion by Member Bass. Is there a second?
I'll second.
The second by Member Phillips. Any discussion on this motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, I move we recommend approval to the County Commission for the Brown All-Star Auto Wash CUP Application 23.076, allowing for the proposed commercial development located at 5806 West Canyon View Place in Mountain Green, based on the findings and with the conditions listed in the staff report dated November 9, 2023.
Okay, motion by Member Bass. Second. A second by Member Wilson. Any discussion on this item? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, number 8, WPR Phase 5 preliminary plat.
Thank you. Item number 8 on tonight's agenda is for application number 23.039. This is a subdivision of 21 lots within a master planned community zoned as Resort Special District, namely Wasatch Peaks Ranch LLC is the applicant here. This is located at approximately 4213 North Morgan Valley Drive near Peterson, identified by the township and range numbers located in your staff report. The area for this project is 97.5 acres. And again, this is the Wasatch Peaks Ranch Development Agreement as a general land use plan overlay with the Resort Special District underlying zone of forestry. Staff has reviewed this project and finds that it meets all minimum code requirements. There were extensive reviews for this item, and many comments addressed the site or the plat before you in your meeting packet is it addressed all fire, planning, and engineering comments. I, along with Josh, can answer any questions you may have, and the applicant is in the audience tonight. Thank you.
Any questions for staff?
I just had one, and maybe, you can, or maybe it's a new moot point. They had their lawsuit, something, or got set aside. I didn't know if that impacted anything, or that would delay, or otherwise impact it, or if that's a separate issue. Just wanted to.
No, that's fine. That's a good question. This application was submitted back in July. It's gone through 3 or 4 major revisions and rounds of comments. Judge Hyde's ruling on the lawsuit regarding the referendum petition that was thrown out because of incompleteness and that Judge Hyde overturned. The way the county is handling it is any application that was submitted prior to Judge Hyde's ruling has been allowed to continue through the process. No new applications will be allowed to be submitted after that point until the ruling from the state Supreme Court is issued. This application has been in process several months prior to Judge Hyde's ruling. So, which is why, based on my discussion with Garrett Smith, County Attorney, we've allowed it to proceed. The final plat also, I believe, will be allowed to proceed as well, as it is part of the platting process.
That's what we're allowing, or that's what we have to allow?
Based on due process rights of all parties involved, that is how the county is proceeding. If you have an issue with that, you can take it up with the county attorney.
Okay. Any more comments for staff or the applicant?
This is administrative, right?
Administrative. Just check the boxes, yes.
Staff, does this check the boxes?
Checks the boxes.
They comply with the code. So, no more discussion. I am ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move we recommend approval of the planning commission for the Wasatch Peaks Ranch subdivision. There's 5A preliminary plat, application number 23.039, lot subdivision plan located approximately 4213 North Northern Valley Drive in unincorporated Morgan County, based on the findings with no conditions in the staff report dated November 9, 2023.
Okay, I have a motion by member Wilson. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by member Miller. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item is the Mountain Green Peterson area plans.
So, well, commissioners, I'm Lance Tyrell. I was asked to kind of walk through the Mountain Green and Peterson area plans. Just to give you a little background, like I said, I'm Lance Tyrell. I live in Mountain Green. I'm from Porterville area, so I'm really familiar with the county and you know, for my whole life. And the some more background about the plan in particular is that last summer, so summer of 2022 is when most of this planning work was done. So just kind of keep that in mind as some of the stats and kind of things are a little bit old on this, but everything else should be pretty relevant. Let's see, I guess just say this was done through a grant from the WFRC, and through IBI Group is the firm that I used to work for until just a few months ago. But I've been happy to kind of stick around and make sure this, kind of walk this plan through. So let's get into the plan. Feel free to ask questions. I think that's probably fine. Is it fine to have an interaction? Or do you want me to just kind of speak all the way through?
Yes.
Okay, so feel free to. Okay, so for most people though, it's new. Okay. Some understanding about what we're talking about here, and then read through, because there's a lot, details that we won't be able to cover in this. So I'll kind of breeze through some of this initial background stuff, just kind of setting the stage. Oh, and a key piece of this too is we're proximity and close in from a land use, utilities, transportation point that we wanted to make sure everything was considered together. So we'll walk through the Mountain Green, see how Peterson will come into play here as we walk through. So again, quickly walking through stuff. We did lanes. The current transportation network and the active transportation network, land uses that we have currently, and the infrastructure. We put together some guiding principles that I'll kind of breeze through again, just for sake of time, and get into the actual plan. This is where we'll spend a little more time. So one thing to kind of set the stage for the planning here is that some of the key things are, when we were looking at this, we know growth is coming, and so we looked at it with clear eyes of like, we didn't want to do like just baby steps or incremental. What's the full build out of Mountain Green and Peterson look like? So we just took the whole town, both towns, into consideration here. Another key thing is the the property tax situation here. You know, we kept hearing that over and over and as a resident, I also know, is that the property taxes burden on residents is really high. It's the second, Morgan County's second only to Davis County for the amount of taxes that come from property taxes. So, you know, we basically what that's saying is we need more commercial uses and other uses that we can tax in order to lower the property tax burden on residents. And so that's part of this plan is how do we do that in a smart way, in a way that creates good growth and makes it a nice town that we're all proud of. The way I've kind of been thinking about this is when we look at growth is we're really transitioning from a rural place to a small town. And that's how do we organize this into a nice, organized, well-planned small town. So if you look at this graphic, this kind of framework plan I think is helpful just to kind of look at the big picture of what Mountain Green is. So, you know, we have, like we talked about, a big chunk of the land is already in Snow Basin and Wasatch Peaks. And in between we have what we're kind of calling the core area, the core town of Mountain Green and Peterson. Within that, we have the Mountain Green Town Center, and then a smaller village center that can be the heart of Peterson down to the south here. So this zooms in on that core town area in the same way of a kind of a high-level framework plan to show you kind of what the idea is here. So the yellow here is labeled mountain residential, and what that essentially a way to think about this is kind of the type of development that's happened in the Cottonwoods or the Highlands. That's the type of development that's kind of anticipated to continue in the yellow areas. In this kind of light brown area, it's what we call valley residential, and that's a good way to think of that. Kind of a simple way to think of what we're thinking here is places like Rollins Ranch or Rose Hill, kind of this valley floor, kind of flat areas in the valley would have a similar type of development to that. And these brighter colors are kind of the newer things that we don't quite have yet, which is in the bright red is the town center, which as I mentioned, this was planned in 2022, and now we're actually seeing the Rome development kind of coming out of the ground and starting to take shape in the town center. But that's where the town center will be. To the left and right of that, we have this town center support, and so that's over here to the west of it is the Canyon View commercial area, which, you know, that's already been kind of figured out that would be this kind of flex commercial space. And to the right, this area is pretty interesting from the standpoint of it can go, I think it could go a few different ways. Essentially, it could become residential. I think this would be a reasonable place to put residential. And previous general plans and have outlined this, kind of identified this to be residential. I do think it's worth, in this plan, recommends allowing the opportunity for commercial uses to be in here, but they would be commercial uses that aren't compatible with the town center. You do want to make sure that we build up the town center with the commercial uses that, you know, the walkable, more so restaurants, things like that. We want to consolidate them, make it a vibrant town center. We don't want to spread them out. But if there was a use that required like a bigger footprint that's not compatible with the town center, then this orange location would be a spot where those types of uses could go. Another key thing we tried to look at was where some different types of housing could go. So, you know, the vast majority of this is going to be single-family housing, but what about some townhouses or some fourplexes or some other what we call missing middle housing? You know, and so we these kind of maroon areas are identified for those. And that would be places where they have close access to freeways, and the visibility is it's in a good spot for minimal impacts visually for the rest of the community. So down here in the river valley, kind of behind the cottonwoods of the Weaver River, and then up here on next to the interchange in Peterson, where, you know, it's kind of hidden back into this gully back here. So like I said, that as we look for places where we could add a little bit more housing, affordable housing, as I mentioned, is a big thing. Where can we put that? And so that's where these locations have been identified for that type of use. So the future land use plan, this just gets a little more, it takes those high level concepts and gets a little more fine grained. Just to be clear, this is not like a zoning code. We're not identifying zones. It's still high level in the sense that these are just recommended classifications for how these areas develop. So looking at the whole county, that yellow piece is the piece we just looked at, the core town area of both Peterson and Mount Green. The orange areas are the resorts that we talked about. This pink area is the what we're calling a potential development area. It's not. It's in a place does have access, though it's limited, and you know it's got a lot of topography and slopes, but there is some development potential there that's known. So we've kind of highlighted that as a unique piece. And then the rest of the area that's hatched is similar, where it's hard to access. It's got natural limitations from slopes and river bottoms and things like that that aren't necessarily prime for development, right? So they're not. It's not that development can occur here, but it's not really contemplated as part of the build-out strategy for Mountain Green and Peterson. And then the last piece of this is this blue area that's in Peterson, but it's kind of past where the hill with the P on it, for Peterson. That's kind of a defining boundary for where we have the core town area for Peterson. And this area is envisioned to basically build out similar to how it is now, how it is along the old highway there, or Morgan Valley Drive through Peterson and through Millen. So not a lot of change that is anticipated in that area. So again, this kind of just formalizes a little bit what I already went over with the mountain residential, the valley residential, town center, this flex commercial area. The one thing I forgot to mention is over by Browning, where Browning headquarters currently is that's anticipated to be a place where similar types of uses, business uses, in a campus-like environment could be located. So it's not high traffic or high traffic volumes. It's like I said, it's intended to be a campus-like business environment where businesses can be located. And then let's see. So we go through specifics on each of these different classifications. I'll give you a couple. I'll go through a couple a little more in detail to kind of give you an idea of how we're framing this. So the idea here is that we don't. A lot of times a zoning code will come in and say like 1 house per acre, and that's what you get, and it's basically take it up, divide it by an acre, and put a house on it. And frankly, that just leads to kind of bad planning, but it's kind of bad for everybody. So the what we're trying to do here is give a range of kind of uses, and so I'll just kind of walk through what we say. So lot sizes in this classification are intended to range from 1/4 acre lots to 3+ acre lots. And that while 1/4 acre lots are allowed, the majority of lots are intended to be a 1/2 acre or larger to maintain a rural mountain feel. And what you end up with, what we're trying to get to with this strategy is something like has happened at the Cottonwoods, where you have some clusters of tighter development, 1/4 acre or even a little bit smaller in a few areas, but also large estate lots, all working together, functioning together in a way that creates a nice community. So that's essentially what we're trying to do. Is try to promote and kind of encourage good planning that works with the topography, that works with the natural location to create, just a good community that has different housing types of all kinds, and not just, like I said, not just say like 1 acre lots spread out everywhere. So again, I'll kind of walk through these pretty quick as they similarly just go into more detail for each of the different classifications. regarding the airport, there's no, no real changes there. It's just maintain the airport as it's currently being used and build it up to make it the best it can be within its limitations. So transportation, this is a key piece that we need to consider, and one of the big things that I probably should have mentioned earlier when we're talking about, I mentioned this area being near an intersection or an interchange, which currently the interchange does not exist. This is the proposed interchange where they would go up to Trappers, and we're also proposing that it should connect over into Peterson as well to create just better connections all around, better flow for transportation and traffic. As things develop, it will really help. It's just, let's get it in and do it right and get the infrastructure in so that we can mitigate traffic issues in the future. And then it helps to make these areas more developable, again, provide more housing, affordable housing, things that will be beneficial to the community with minimal impact to the community, existing community. Like I said, it's because it's right next to the interchange, and it's quite hidden from everything else. The other key thing with the traffic is that we need to create these secondary roads, especially through like this one right here that would go through the town center and connect kind of parallel to the freeway. And the reason is essentially we right now pretty much all subdivisions and all development connects onto the old highway, and if we don't get good connected street grid built as development occurs, it'll continue to just feed onto the highway and just really become a traffic nightmare. So some proactive thinking about how that street network will eventually line up and be able to mitigate traffic on Old Highway Road, that's extremely important. So we looked at active transportation, trails, bike networks, things like that on this slide. Some of this is aspirational, just to say it's things like trails along the creeks. A lot of it just will never happen. But it's one of the things about kind of a plan is put it on the map. If the opportunity comes up, jump on it. But if not, it's understandable that certain things are just locked in. So when it comes to parks and open space, we have this map identifying just the key natural features to maintain and protect, as well as some locations where we think parks would make sense. So one key thing about this too is that this isn't requiring a park at any location, and it's not requiring open space to be maintained in any of these locations either. These are simply recommended places that parks would line up with the land uses that we've talked about earlier, and as well as just sensitive environmental areas that should be. So the reason that we call them out here is so that when development proposals come in, the county can kind of point to this map and say, hey, this is a sensitive area, what can we do to help protect this area without taking away your development rights? So that's the key to this map. As far as open space preservation, there's a handful of tools that should be considered and really proactively used to start identifying these key locations and seeing if some of those tools can be used to permanently preserve these open spaces. I think the key thing to do this is it's going to cost money to do it. Most of these tools cost a lot of money, right? We talk about a land trust and conservation easements. It's usually buying those property rights. One of the best ways is to do it through zoning tools and incentives. So when properties redevelop or develop, that the code is ready, the county's ready to kind of understand how to allow for development, but also preserve the proper open space that during that plan. So again, going back to look at the way Cottonwoods was developed, you can see in the light green here, all this is dedicated open space. So that's an example of how to again, plan for the community and also protect open space long term. So this gets into what I think is one of the most important and under appreciated aspects of what we really need to do is good design and planning. You know, when people hear like the word density or you know, even just townhouses or fourplexes or something, it's kind of scary. We don't want that in our community. It's too much. We don't want to become like the Wasatch Front, which I totally understand, and I have to say the key thing is designing it correctly so that it feels appropriate to Morgan, it feels appropriate to the location. It feels like a small town and not like a just plopped in repetitive types of multifamily units. So to kind of walk through some of those key points, the way this is structured is we're using this idea of the transect, which is, you can see here, it corresponds to this map right here where we have like the mountain residential and it's the least dense, and as you get towards the town center it becomes the most dense. And it's kind of a step up in intensity as you get towards that, and that helps give the community some organization and some you know, or some rhyme and reason to how everything's kind of comes together. So we go into important things like open space conservation, dark skies, housing options, the connected street network, water conservation. This graphic right here kind of illustrates pretty well, I think, how kind of what you want to avoid and a better alternative. So on the north side of this collector road, on the top side, is the better version where you have a connected street network. You have kind of an identifiable center with walkable streets and a nice kind of main street that forms here. Your green spaces are nice and organized and usable by the community. And versus this place where it's everything's cul-de-sacs and disconnected, and it's a giant parking lot that's not very aesthetic, you know. It's just not, this feels like suburbia, like anywhere USA. And what we want to make sure we do is, and everything's just disconnected, you have to get in your car to get anywhere. What we want to try to do is create something that's, again, something that's a walkable small town experience. So we talk about preserving view sheds, site grading, and this idea of, you know, I think this is another good graphic to show this idea of just putting 1 acre lots and spreading them out all over the landscape versus consolidating them in a way that preserves open space, in a way that's actually usable. You know, you can still farm this. It creates nice trail systems and native natural habitat, and I think is the way to go. And something we've seen through surveys and speaking with residents is that this is a preferred way forward. So as I just mentioned, we did a survey that asked residents questions about the future of Mountain Green and Peterson. One of the questions was about basically the aesthetic of the architecture. And what came back was that for Mountain Green, a kind of traditional mountain aesthetic, mountain town aesthetic was preferred. One thing that we talk about is we don't want to create some sort of overly restrictive theme. It's not, you know, we don't want it all to look the same, but architecture should evoke this mountain town character, which is different than Peterson. We probably don't have time to go through the specifics, but in Peterson, what came back was a more agricultural aesthetic. So and there's a few things like that that will distinguish Peterson as its own kind of separate, unique town with its own identity versus Mountain Green. Some of the key characteristics about how to site buildings, commercial buildings in the land, basically in a development, and how to create, you know, a nice street wall and where to put the parking. So you're creating, again, so it's much more aesthetically pleasing. It's much more walkable. You're not just seeing, you know, a sea of parking surrounding the commercial uses. Here's some examples of of those housing options, alternatives that we're, allowing within this plan, which is, and I think these are helpful to see that, we're nowhere outside of the town center are we proposing apartments, townhouses, and that type of a housing option would be the most dense, so to speak, that we would get. So these are some examples of those few small bubbles that we're even proposing. We think this type of development would be appropriate. And again, going into what that should look like, what we don't want to see is the same kind of townhome complex or apartment complex just repeated over and over and stuck together. What we want to see is something that's far more designed well, planned well. It considers the pedestrian experience. It considers monotony in the streetscape. You can see a couple of good examples of that below here of how to do that. And then we show some good examples of how this is done, and some bad examples. So this is a good example where a whole bunch of different uses, lot types, we have commercial apartments, mixed-use buildings, lots of landscape and open space that's nicely weaved in through the community in a way that's really walkable and really aesthetically pleasing. It's just again, this creates that really nice small town feel that I was talking about. This is what you want to be careful to avoid, and what I think a lot of people understandably think of when they think of apartments or townhomes or density, and that's, this is a generic subdivision on the Wasatch Front where you get the same unit repeated over and over. Garage is just, there's no trees, it's just a very undesirable experience. Even the open space is just vinyl fencing. There's no interaction with it. It's kind of dead space. It's not a pleasant environment. And so here's kind of the plan view of that place, and how, despite having a bunch of different unit types and kind of a mix of uses, it's not a good. We want to avoid this at all costs, right? And that's where design and planning comes into play here, is how important it is and how easy it could be to end up with something like this if not designed and planned properly. Mountain Green Town Center. So the uses for this are already entitled through a development agreement, but there's certain things we want to encourage to really maximize it as the heart of the community. So one is the town square, and how important that can be, a place where you have the Christmas tree in the holiday season, where you have concerts in the farmers markets in the summer, and a place where the community can just gather as the heart of the community. A Main Street experience is something that would be, as you're putting commercial uses into here, how can we create something that creates a really cool place, a nice experience, rather than just spreading them out everywhere. So an example of that is, a couple good examples, and they have different lessons to be learned from them, but one is Midway, Utah, which I think does a really good job. This is a historic downtown, but this has a lot of lessons to teach about how to create a really great small town. And that's kind of looking at the different pieces and how they're all arranged. But that's a historic downtown. It's kind of hard to recreate some of that stuff. A good example of a brand new downtown is in Big Sky, Montana, where they were able to create a lot of the things that we just talked about, like a main street, a plaza, like a central plaza, town square. The parking is hidden in a way that makes sense so that this is a really nice walkable experience. It's got a hotel, grocery stores, a whole bunch of different uses in here. It's got residential uses on top of the retails. So, there's ways to do this that doesn't turn out to be like this, which is Kimball Junction. This is the cautionary tale for another outcome we want to avoid at all costs. Infrastructure. So we're getting towards the end. The infrastructure recommendations here. So this infrastructure is a real issue right now, as you probably all kind of know, for in Mountain Green. Trying to think about how to summarize things, but it's regarding water, culinary water. There's within Peterson and Mountain Green, there's 3 different main sources of water, 3 different water companies, and they're all kind of doing their own thing. There's sometimes competition. Peterson Pipeline Company, from what I understand, is almost maxed out or is maxed out, and so the recommendation from our engineers on this study was to combine those all to try to create something that's more, especially when it comes to development and future development, of what can entice developers and make things easy for them. You don't want to. It can be hard for them to come in. They don't know who to go to for water. There's often some conflicting information. There's often it just becomes a headache for a lot of developers. So streamlining that process, simplifying it, making it easier, something that resembles more like the Mountain Green Sewer Improvement District. It's far more easy to understand. That's the recommendation there. Sewer in Peterson is a big issue, and the fact that it's all in septic. There is no sewer system in Peterson right now, and so when we look at the land use plan that we put up, there's no way that would function. You're going to have sewer in order to get anything more than what I believe. I think right now the code is half acre. You need at least a half acre lot for a septic tank, and even with that said, if you did half acre lots all over Peterson, that's a lot of septic happening on top of the valley floor, which is the aquifers right underneath it, and you're asking for trouble if you put too many septic tanks in Peterson. So the recommendation is that find the right balance of development that would justify the cost of a sewer, either a new sewer district, which could be a package plant, which is smaller, easier to kind of install and maintain for a place like Peterson, or to basically cross the river and bring it into the Mountain Green Sewer District. Both options I think need to be studied further, see which one makes the most sense, but both are reasonable possibilities. And the last one here is economic development strategies and tactics. So basically, how do we boost up tax base? How do we draw in commercial uses and the things we want? The real key thing here is that, frankly, we just need more rooftops to make commercial viable. One of the interesting pieces here is this graph shows the number of households. So for example, we need 167 more households to support a food, service, and drinking places. This is pretty rough. It's very high level, but you can kind of start to get the scale of what we're talking about here. So one of the key things that's interesting is I'm trying to figure out which one was the grocery store. They're coded a little weird. I think it might be this one, this retail and food and beverage store. So we're fortunate that we have a grocery store going in, despite being over 1,000, over 1,500 units short of what they would typically want to kind of guarantee success. And I haven't talked to them. I don't know what their thinking is, but it seems like they're counting on traffic from passing through, right? And future development. As we saw, there's a lot of units entitled to be developed, and so that's my guess is what is allowing for that. But essentially, what we're seeing is we need more rooftops to support the stores, to even the grocery store, so that it doesn't go out of business, and need for future commercial uses are going to just need more people around. So these are slides looking at the tax revenues. Like I mentioned, how much property tax is being charged in Mountain Green or in Morgan County in general, and how it relates to the rest of the state. We also worked out 2 different scenarios that kind of show if this build out happens in a couple of different versions, a max version or a more likely version, what's using 2022 dollars, kind of what we could expect tax revenues to look like based on those uses. And then we have a handful of economic development kind of strategies to incorporate to make to grease the wheels, to make it as easy for businesses that Morgan County wants to come in, that they can actually do it in a way that makes sense. And then we have kind of a next steps checklist of things that need to happen to continue moving the plan forward. So one thing, I guess the last thing is that's in the in this next steps that we're going to cover is the question of short-term rentals, Airbnbs, things like that. One of my biggest concerns would be that we allow for some townhomes, for some more affordable housing options, and that they all get purchased by investors, and it becomes Airbnb rentals, which could help for the tax base, but could really damage, I think, the community, the residential community that we want to promote, the small town feel. If we want people who live in Morgan to want to actually live here, raise their kids here, to live in these, to be able to afford somewhere to live, that's the kind of goal here. So to put in place some kind of restrictions or parameters around where those Airbnbs can go, which what we recommend is that in the town core, that it's pretty limited. It's not to say it couldn't exist, but a lot of limitations within the town core of Mountain Green, but in Snow Basin and these other places where I think it makes a lot more sense to allow for that. Then you get the tax revenues, you get tourism that can help support all these uses, but you don't really compromise that community that we're trying to build. And like I said, if we're building affordable housing, I want it to go to, as a person or as a resident, and recommending as a plan is that it should go to people who live here and work here and want to be part of the community. So that's it for the quick rundown. Anybody have any questions?
I'm just kind of curious, Lance, when you were doing this, like what percent would you say were really behind this plan?
Yeah, so we haven't got a lot. This hasn't been out there to be reviewed yet by the communities. But what we did do was a survey where we asked people, basically a lot of questions about what they wanted to see, and we definitely got a lot of people saying don't do anything at all. But the vast majority of people in that survey were saying, I get it, begrudgingly, and if we're going to do it, let's do it right. There are some valuable things we can get out of it. I would love a restaurant and a grocery store and a aquatic center, and are there things that we can do to make our town better. So I would say probably 70% of the public response from the survey was in line with that.
Thanks for your work too. It's good. This is fantastic.
Your other area plans are going to have to step up.
Mine's gonna look exactly like this.
Yeah.
Just to so you don't feel bad, we did have a grant and spent a lot of time on this one, so this wasn't if this was in evenings, it wouldn't look like this.
So Lance, where you're talking about stay away from doing short-term rentals in the town center. How do we go back now? Because there's new development with townhomes that was specifically included in their development agreement.
Yeah.
And how do you stop now?
So with that it's already in motion, I think that's okay. It's not going to kill everything. But as we continue to build, we just want to not allow for every time we build, something new, some more townhomes or affordable housing that it gets bought up by investors. So I don't think that's the killer, as long as we look at the big picture over the next decade or more.
So one other question for you. Earlier tonight we were talking about detached accessory dwelling units, and one of the topics that was in there was one that you'd have the landowner or the homeowner has to live there as well, but then Do you look at that as those detached accessory dwelling units have the option to do short-term rentals? Does that fit this, or
Yeah.
would you also recommend limiting those?
No, I do think in that case, if it was an ADU where the homeowner lives in the main unit and they wanted to use the detached unit for an Airbnb or short-term rental, to me, I don't think that compromises the community character that I'm concerned about. So I think that, to me, I see that as a way for somebody to help kind of pay for their mortgage or other things, and don't see an issue with that. I think that's kind of on their property and
And that's not as disruptive as like allowing them in the town center.
right, exactly. So I think that's one of the trade-offs is, like I said, if you ask most residents, they're not going to want anything but single-family housing, and even that, they don't want that much single-family housing, right? It's as little as we can do, and so. But the promise of the benefit of the housing is that, and it's affordable or more affordable. That hopefully some people who want to live here, who might have grown up here, can move back to, and so that new stuff that gets developed, that's what we want to try to make sure that's in place, and that which I think is different than somebody's accessory dwelling unit, and it's those aren't being. I just think it's a different category. It doesn't really affect that community character.
Awesome. Thanks.
Any more questions?
Oh, yeah, one more question. About these collector streets. Like, I'm looking at that. Is that already part of the future plan for Peterson to have Morgan Valley Drive extend down? Like that, or is that?
We have our old area plan, called for those transportation corridors, and then when going back along the bottom of underneath the Weaver Basin Canal, kind of looping around.
Yeah, I can't remember if it followed this exact
Yeah,
alignment, but it essentially connected those two. It extended all the way up to the north here, like it's showing. I don't think it anticipated the
interchange at the
change
time,
there.
because we didn't have that on the books
But it did.
15 years ago, but
And that the land that you were talking about being it's just to the south of where the town center is. Isn't that the M&D Nelson, where M&D Nelson is?
Yeah, I think I know where you're talking about, which is I believe it's
that
right
the
here.
orange right there. Isn't M&D right there? Or am I?
no, you're right at the beginning of, the west end of it.
That falls in line with what this is, right? Cool. That's all the questions I have for now.
Okay.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you, Lance,
Yep.
for coming back.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yep. Yeah, I encourage everybody to read through it. And there's a lot of details in there. Make sure you don't see anything that jumps out as an issue. But yeah. Thanks.
What?
Did you find it on the county website?
Has it been put on the county website yet? I think it'd be.
Yeah.
And put it in draft form, just.
Yeah, we've got the word draft on here. Hopefully that communicates. Every page has or every spread at least has draft here. So as long as that's understood, yeah. Okay. I'll figure. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, we're on to business and staff questions. Questions for staff?
I'm just always curious about Ravala. What do you heard on Ravala? That was just a bad question.
It's just funny because you ask it.
Yeah. I just was curious if they're still moving ahead.
They are still moving ahead. The how to put it? Their development agreement expires December 4th of this year. They've submitted a preliminary plat for the concept plan that was approved. That's under review. It's still in review from the engineer, fire, and planning, so it's not ready to bring forward. They've submitted a concept plan for phase 2. Concept plans carry no vested right whatsoever. And preliminary plat approval is where the vesting starts. So I'm not sure how the county commission's gonna move forward with it. I know
that
they've
doesn't-
submitted an application to extend their development agreement, but there's nothing that guarantees the development agreement has to be extended. It's a legislative process, so the county commission may say no, or they may say bring something better back, or I don't know what they're gonna say.
What
That
is,
answers my question.
yeah, what is required for the development agreement? All the applications have to be in by then, or did they just need concept in by
No,
that
it doesn't-
deadline?
It doesn't really talk about that. As far as applications in process, following what we've done for WPR, we'll probably do the same for them. The applications they've submitted we'll probably take forward, but again, it'll be probably a discussion between Garrett and the county commission and myself how to handle it. I think the preliminary plat will at least be allowed to go forward even after it expires, but again, it'll be up to the county commission, I think. Thanks. Is there a way we could hold another work session to go through the rest of the text, maybe next Tuesday or Wednesday?
Next Wednesday?
Tuesday or Wednesday. After that, I'm gone.
Personally, I prefer Tuesday.
I can do either
I
one.
might make Wednesday work too.
I would prefer Tuesday as well if that works for you.
That's fine.
At 5 of them.
Does 5 work, or we could hold it at 5:30? Make sure.
I gotta check. I think I have a conflict on Tuesday, but I'll double check. So don't plan to run into this. I think I have a conflict.
We can set it for 5 o'clock then.
Okay.
If that works.
So this Tuesday coming up, we're
Yep.
meeting at 5.
That's the only staff business question I have.
Okay.
I did have one thing. After the end of this, if you could get with Mikkel or Jeremy to pick the color of the hoodie. The planning department is going to give hoodies to the planning commission as a thank you for your another year of service at the Christmas party. So give us your color. I think we have your sizes already. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, approval of the minutes. If you've gotten your corrections,
Minutes.
have a motion to approve and a second by member Miller. All in favor?
I so moved.
Opposed?